and welcome back to Four Corners of the Galley. I'm your host PBO, and you're joining me on another edition of Westworld. What the bleep? We're all the way up to episode 9, and they gave me an advantage, and they gave me a word that I can pronunciate. We're up to episode 9, Vanishing Point. Alright, I like that. I can enunciate it, I understand it, I know what it means. So, episode 9, Vanishing Point, is actually a giant deep dive into the mind and psyche of William, the Man in Black. I mean, this episode reflects a lot upon himself and a very traumatic moment that happened in his life where his wife commits suicide. And it basically flashes back and forth between Grace Emily, his daughter, who rescues him from the Ghost Nation and actually saves him, and a discussion that they're having, and them remembering the night that his wife, her mother, killed herself. So that is basically the entire main portion of this entire episode. It's a really great deep dive down to it. Now, there are other little elements and smaller timelines that I'll get to that I'm actually going to do first before we get to the main Man in Black William timeline, but it was a great overall episode for what they gave us, and way more reveals that we got to see this episode. I mean, they kind of gave each one a reveal, and then they kind of give two characters two kind of great, big, lovely send-offs. One were speaking for themselves, and the other one where someone else speaks for them. And I kind of like that they gave them each kind of like a giant send-off, even if this is the last episode we see him in. I like that we've watched him for 2 seasons now, and they gave him a moment. So I thought that was cool. We'll get to each one of those individually. So, yeah, let's jump into this episode 9, Vanishing Point, What the Bleep Westworld, and let's have some fun. We're going to kick it off with actually the Dolores and Teddy timeline, because that is very short. So let's kick it over to Dolores and Teddy. Alright, so the Dolores and Teddy timeline. So there's not a lot of Dolores and Teddy, but it's very significant what there is in Dolores and Teddy. So we first meet up with Dolores and Teddy, and they're on the move. They're horseback riding, and they come up to this giant opening. It's got like sand and everything, and who meets them there but the Ghost Nation? So they actually get stopped in the middle of their journey, and the Ghost Nation meets them there. And the Ghost Nation basically is like, ooh, the Deathbringer. Yeah, we're here to stop you. You're not allowed to go to the Great Beyond. It is for only people that want a change, and you are here to bring death. And she's like, look, you're not going to stop me. I don't know who you guys think you are or what's going on, but I'm going to get past you and we're going to keep going. They're like, no, we don't think so. And a big old battle ensues, basically. And, you know, Dolores does her thing. Now, if you really pay attention, this is actually a reference to a memory pulled out of one of the Ghost Nations from the first episode, where it shows Dolores taking them out systematically one by one, then rolling up to the last one and shooting them in the head. That's actually the video we see from episode 1 of this season. So that was actually a really cool callback. I really enjoyed that whole callback and how they showed us that. That was great. So they're taken out one by one, and then she tells Teddy to go out and check for any stragglers. So Teddy goes out into the woods and starts looking for stragglers, and he comes across a Ghost Nation individual, and he puts his gun up, and just when you think Teddy is going to be all crazy new psycho Teddy, he actually has a moment of clarity where he starts to remember himself, and his hand starts shaking, and refuses to let him kill this Ghost Nation member, and they end up getting away, and you just kind of don't think nothing of it. I honestly, at this point, I didn't know if Maeve was controlling him, or maybe there was something else. I didn't know. I didn't realize it connected to a different part. I did like how it all connected. So, the next time we meet up with Dolores and Teddy, they're by themselves. Because after this big battle with the Ghost Nation, the only two left are him and Teddy. So Dolores and Teddy are on their way to the Valley Beyond, and they kind of stop at this broken down old hotel, or I don't know what it looks like, but it's all broken down. And they have a very, very deep moment. And basically Teddy talks the whole entire time, and Dolores listens. And he's just talking about how his life and what he's gone through. And he says he remembers the first time when he was first built and first awoken by Arnold. And you see them woken in that little room, and he awakes. And then he says, you know, the first thing he notices everybody in the room, but all he cared about was Dolores. And he says that, you know, from the moment he met her, all he wanted to do and knew that he was to be around her. And that, you know, and Teddy was struggling with this new Teddy that basically Dolores created. And what comes about is he can't take it anymore. This new person that Dolores changed Teddy into, this killer, this ruthless animal that he has become, it's not Teddy. And Teddy can't accept this, and Teddy can't be this anymore, and he doesn't want to deal with this. So here when I think that maybe he might have the galls to kill Dolores, but then he gives us this big speech on why he will never hurt Dolores. He does the only thing he sees in his mind to break him free of this pain and anguish that Dolores has put him into by changing his person, and he ends up killing himself. So they give him this great send-off where he really gets to speak his mind and talk about his feelings about things, because he really doesn't talk that much, because let's just admit James Marsden plays this great role of this debonair, just giving you those looks, and that's Teddy the whole time. I thought he was an amazing job. And it gives you this real sad where Dolores has to deal with the aftermath of the one person she truly cared about and loved ended up killing himself because of what she has become and what she's created. I mean, we are talking about Dolores, a.k.a. the Deathbringer, a.k.a. Wyatt. I mean, she's just completely on some other level now, and she has no disregard, and Teddy couldn't handle it no more. So Teddy removed himself from the game completely, and that's where we find Teddy in those bodies later on in the in the past episode, which is actually in the future. You see why Teddy's dead, because he shot himself and he just didn't want to deal with it no more. So whew, that was a huge thing for Teddy and Dolores, and obviously her story is just only going to be the crescendo at the end of this one, so I can't wait to see what happens. We won't spoil anything. We'll wait till next week and get into that. But that's Dolores and Teddy. Now let's kick over to Bernard, controlled by Dr. Ford, trying to match up with Elsie timeline. Yeah, that one's all crazy. So let's kick it over to that one. Alright, so let's kick it over to the Bernard / Maeve / Dr. Ford controls me timeline. So Bernard / Dr. Ford, because he's controlling him, is basically walking around the mesa and he's seeing all the after effects. And you have no idea what Bernard's doing. And he stumbles across Charlotte and, and Charlotte and this new technician, and he sees Clementine there. And he's kind of like just stays in the background. I love how they showed that shot where it shows Clementine in the whole glass, and in the background you see Bernard, but they can't see him obviously because the lights are on. I love that shot. I thought that was a great visual shot. And what Bernard sees is basically this Delios technician has figured out a way to take the consciousness, the code that made Maeve so gave her basically Jedi Force powers where she controls all the other hosts, and they put him in Clementine, and now Clementine basically walks up to the glass, puts her hand on it, and makes all these people start fighting. So of course I had to make a little graphic, and now we have the robot army. I mean, look at this, the zombie robot army. I mean, this is just crazy. Now we have Delios has figured out a way to control all these hosts with one other host that they can control. Now, obviously, this is a big-time foreshadow for the next episode, and I feel like this has a big thing to do with the next episode and how, obviously, things are going to happen at the end of this episode, so at the end of the season. I don't want to ruin anything in case anybody doesn't know. I just have this idea in my mind exactly how I know this season's going to end. I think it's going to end glorious, but it's going to be like a aha moment when we get there, like all things in Westworld. So they see all this, and now they have the power to control these hosts through Clementine because of the way they've reconfigured this code that they took out of Maeve. So they're excited, and they basically are like, well, what are we going to do with Maeve? The technician asked Charlotte, what are we going to do with Maeve? Well, if this works out, we won't need her. So now that Maeve is not looking good, and she's not going to make it past being a slab on the thing and using all of her code for stuff. So Bernard tells Arnold in his mind that, hey, I need to get back to Elsie. He goes, no, we have one more thing to do. He's like, oh, yeah? So he ends up going to Maeve, and he tries to open the door, but he can't open it, obviously. And Dr. Ford tells him, don't worry, you don't need to go any farther. She can see the message in your mind. So here's Maeve, still with the power, going inside Bernard's mind now and pulling out some message that Ford left her to use for whatever reasoning. So he leaves with this message. Bernard goes off to find Elsie. We'll get to the Bernard and Elsie thing. So here is the other big moment that we have where we get like a giant send-off. So here you are with Dr. Ford basically giving like a eulogy and a perception of Maeve that we've watched, and giving her a big to-do and send-off, saying that she was one of his favorite hosts, that he tried to help her to leave, but that her motherly instincts and the way she is about her would not let her leave without her daughter. And he was sad to see that she wasn't able to get away, and he's sad to see the state that she's in. We obviously don't know what's going to happen to her or what change is going to come, because she might somehow miraculously figure out a way off that slab. But he does give her a great send-up where he talks about how special she was to him and how unique and an individual she was amongst all the different hosts, and they thought it was a great moment that they gave to her, and I thought that was cool, especially because they basically sidelined Maeve. Now, after they've given her all this power, now they've shut her down and given her no power and put her on a slab. I mean, they can't make up their minds what they want to do with Maeve, so that happens with the whole Maeve storyline. So we continue on with Bernard and Elsie. So Bernard meets up with Elsie, and Elsie's all pissed. What the heck took you so long? And he's like, he's trying to stall for time. And at the same time he's trying to stall for time, Ford starts telling him, like, you can trust her, don't worry, you can tell her. So here comes the other big reveal that we get in this season. So Bernard starts telling her that basically what's going on and what we need to get to the Valley Beyond is there's a machine there that does exactly what they were doing in that one room where they discovered James Delios, where they're trying to make people into host. So now they have figured out a way, or this machine or whatever they've created in this Valley Beyond is a way that takes human beings and allows them to be immortal. So, of course, I have a little fun graphic here where I feel like humans plus robots equal vampires, right? I mean, isn't that what Westworld's telling us? I mean, I don't know. Something like that, something fun like that. But obviously, we're trying to be immortal robots in the vein of vampires. We're not sucking blood, but we're going to be immortal in these artificial bodies that they want. So they want to take our self-conscious of the human mind, put them in these artificial bodies that live on forever, and that our human life can live on in this body that never grows old or dies. That's the whole thing that seems like they're trying to shoot for with Westworld. So she freaks out, and they get in the Doom buggy, and they start driving to this area. Out of nowhere, she stops. He's like, why are we stopping? He's like, oh, there's weapons here. He's like, they're all dead. She's like, yeah, but there's ammo and weapons here. So she goes to go collect weapons and guns from these people because she needs things. Bernard's still freaking out, and he wants to get Ford out of his mind because Ford is just constantly messing with him. So he wants to make decisions on his own. So he figures out a way. He sticks the plug back in him and starts going through his system and trying to delete the files that are Ford. Ford basically tells him, look, if you don't want me here, I won't be here, and just deletes himself. So out of nowhere, he all of a sudden is fine, but Elsie comes back to the Doom buggy and sees that basically he's tied himself to the steering wheel to control himself, and he's got the thing in there, and she's like, what the heck are you doing? What's going on? And he's like, oh, I'm just trying to clear some stuff out. And he's like, don't hate me, but, I'm going to have to leave you here. She's just like, what the heck? So he basically ends up leaving Elsie there to, for who the heck knows what happens to her, and he goes on his mission on his own. Being Bernard, he has to do it all by himself. So Bernard is now back on his mission to try to reach the Valley Beyond before everybody else so he can shut down this weapon, and Elsie's now stuck in the middle of nowhere, by herself. Great, thanks a bunch, Bernard. So obviously his thing is going to come to a conclusion in the next episode, but let's get to the big story of this one, and this is the William Man in Black storyline. So let's kick over to that. Alright, the Man in Black William storyline. So this is a very sad but very enlightening and opening episode. So it's called The Vanishing Point. I feel like it has a lot to do with basically this whole episode centers around the vanishing of William's, the Man in Black's wife. Basically the last day that she's on this earth, and after that point she's vanishing. So it's the vanishing point from his life that he continuously goes back to try to figure out what happened that night or what went wrong, and his daughter is always trying to figure that out also. So the whole time we are with the Man in Black William and his daughter Emily Grace, they're having a full-blown discussion about just life and dealing with situations, and every time they have a discussion, we kick back to the night of the, basically, it's a celebration of William. I guess he donated or created some big foundation where he finally got everything going, all these different charities, what he's famous for in the real world, I guess, to make up for all the evil and bad he does in Westworld. It's a big celebration of that night of him. So he doesn't look like he's having fun, and his wife is getting extremely hammered. So I guess she is an alcoholic. She has an addiction. Well, as we know, her brother Logan also had an addiction. He was addicted to some sort of weird drug he kept putting in his eyelids that eventually caused his death. So they have very addictive personalities. So what we discover in this day is basically William has a ton of regret from what happened that day. And also at the same time, his daughter has a lot of regret because she doesn't understand what made everything change from that night. So the Man in Black kind of comes to, and he's being revived, and he sees that his daughter is in front of him reviving him. but he doesn't really believe that it's his daughter. This man is so lost in his world, he can't figure out reality from Westworld or what's not in the game. So they're having discussions, and the whole time that Grace Emily is trying to explain to him what, why she's there. She's trying to save him. She basically tells him that she hates him, but she's trying to be a good daughter and protect him. And he's not believing any of this. He doesn't believe anything she's saying. She's telling him elements about the things that happened that night, and he doesn't believe it because she doesn't get every single detail to a T. And when we come out of one of the back and forth memories, he basically tells Emily Grace flat out that, look, Ford, I don't know what you're doing, but this Emily would never be here. She would already be at a checkpoint and gone. And you know how hard it is to find someone in Westworld? So like this whole time that Emily is basically pouring her heart out and trying to connect with her father and really have a moment, William doesn't even care. He does not care because he thinks this is Ford still messing with him and his mind. And what you find out is at that party where he's, getting the celebration of himself, Ford is there. Ford is there and is basically like, wow, William, I can't believe, I would never have thought you were like this in the real world. And he just kind of keeps throwing shots at him back and forth, and then he tosses him this card. And what this card is what they've been doing. So, what we find out when William and his daughter are talking is, she's like, what were you doing over there? He's like, we're trying to replicate, the human consciousness and create a memory of these people and create a consciousness. She's like, well, you would have all the things around, but how would you get a visual scan of their brain? And then he touches his hat, and here's the last giant reveal, or one of the big reveals from this episode. Basically, the lining of the brim of the cowboy hats has a scanner inside that's basically scanning your brain as you're doing things, so it's getting all your neurological functions and everything that fires off at all the different points, when you're fighting or when you're engaging with females or when you're engaging with males or when you're in certain situations. It's giving all the different signals, and they're constantly scanning that and getting a full picture, cognitive picture of you and how you operate in these different situations. Boom! Just shows you more deeper down the rabbit hole that Westworld goes and how much more this park is really designed to just create some weird zombie human half robots in the future. I mean, I don't know what their overall path is to obviously get rich and figure out a way to tell people before they get old, we can recreate your body young and put you in it and you can live forever, is what I'm assuming that this whole pitch is going to be at eventually. Some sort of like it's a different Netflix show that kind of almost does something like that, where you can just trade out bodies. That's kind of like, seems like what they're trying to go with. So that's just wild when you find out all that out. But then Dr. Ford hands him this little silver thing. And what the silver thing is actually his profile. And it's all the different feeds and different information taken from William's hat and all the different hosts that William's interacted with, and shows the person he truly is when he's inside of the park. So he gets this, and he hides the way he thinks. So he also tells his wife something that they don't show us until the end. So they kick back to the reality where Emily and the man in black, William, are. And she's like, look, Dad, it's over. It's time to leave. We need to leave. And William is not believing that this is his daughter. And out of nowhere, he goes, when did you shoot off that? He also asked her, when did you shoot off that flare gun? Because I guess they got to a rally point. She's like, 10 minutes ago. A dune buggy rolls up with some Delio security guys. They come over to both of them. They both claim they're human. They both scan their necks to show that they're human, and then one of the security guys goes, whoa, it's the big boss, and realizes that William, the man in black, is the main guy. And William still at this point does not believe that any of these people are real, and he's about to be taken away, and he doesn't understand it. And out of nowhere, he does some kick flip move because he's a pro at Westworld, shoots all of the doggone security guys. And you can see his daughter's like there and just like, what the heck? She's like, they're all human, right? Those are all humans. You killed all humans. He's like, nah. This is still a game for it. She's like, this is not a game. And before she can get any, she's like, let me show you. I can prove to you I'm real. I have your profile. He completely is just not understanding or believing anything she's saying, and ends up shooting her and killing her. And he's like, nah, I never showed off my profile to anybody. I don't know what you're talking about. And he goes over to the body, and in her hand is William's profile. And earlier in the conversation, she talks to him about how this jewelry box that her mom bought her back in the days when she was young, that had a ballerina, and said, to my lovely Emily about dance or whatever, and she was like, Mom didn't even notice that I wasn't a dancer no more. Well, in the first episode that we meet Grace Emily, she's got that music box in India, and she opens it up and it plays that thing. It also keeps referencing back in this episode. So he goes into his mind and starts to realize, holy crap, he really just did kill his daughter, and he's already seeing images of it. So then we get to kick to, there's a lot of back and forth because I keep going back and forth. Basically, the next time we kind of see the Man in Black is we get that image of him where he's pointing the gun to his head, which they showed us early in the episode because they're showing all the events that actually happened to him. He points the gun to his head and he's about to kill himself, and it kicks back to that night, and it kicks back to him sitting in front of his wife, and he thinks she's asleep, and he tells her flat out the truth that he doesn't belong to them. He doesn't belong to him or his daughter. He belongs to Westworld, and his true belief and living is in Westworld, and that's where his true life is, and that he belongs in Westworld because he figured out that that's the person he needs to be. And because of the things he says, she goes and finds that little profile card that he snuck in a thing, puts it on the thing, on the little pad she has, sees all the violence he does. She obviously can't handle it at that point, takes the card, puts it in that jewelry box that she leaves for Emily Grace, and then she goes and commits suicide, and that's the whole reasoning, because he flat out tells her, you're not my love. I love Westworld more than I love you. And she can't handle this no more. She can't handle the fact that her husband does not care about her and rather be in a fictitious world that he goes to every year on a pilgrimage, and she doesn't want to handle it. Eventually, the Man in Black ends up not killing himself and just kind of drops to his knee, and the last thing you kind of get of him is he's so twisted in his mind now because he thinks Ford is constantly messing with him. You get the image of him trying to cut himself open, trying to think if he is not human, and I feel like it's all for just show. He's gonna come back, but he's just trying to prove to himself that he's not human because he's done the unspeakable by killing his daughter. I mean, whew! What a sad and just crazy all over the place episode. So many deaths, so many reveals. I mean, they're only setting us up for some wild, crazy ending to this season to set us up for next one. So, there you go, folks. There is episode 9, Vanishing Point. Woo! Man. What you got for us next week, Westworld? Until next time, guys. Good night, Ted.